Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sam Kern, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Virginia Morris. We warmly welcome the family of Private Thomas Edward John Leach, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services League of Australia and the RSL and the Services Club Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was a vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they'd done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honor, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Thomas Edward John Leach. Thomas Leach was born on the 31st of July 1921 in Inglewood, Victoria, the son of Thomas and Annie Leach. Young Thomas and his brothers Lindsay and Kenneth grew up in Riola in central Victoria. He attended Riola Primary School and later worked on the family farm as a charcoal burner. With the advent of the Second World War, Leach joined the militia on the 8th of October 1941, becoming part of the 25th Battalion, a militia unit maintained on part-time basis voluntarily. As the prospect of the war in the Pacific grew, training gained in intensity, and when Japan entered the war in late 1941, the 25th Battalion was mobilised for full-time service. On the 26th of August 1942, Leach enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force. Though he had been serving full-time, enlisting in the AIF was necessary for him to serve overseas. After a period with a training battalion, in late February 1943, Leach began to make his way to New Guinea. He took a train to Queensland and then embarked on the troop ship Duntroon at Townsville. In late March, he joined his battalion in Port Moresby. In April, Private Leach was charged with neglecting to obey a general order and was fined. Returning to Australia in November 1943, Leach and his comrades underwent a period of training. They were then deployed to Madang in New Guinea, where they undertook garrison duties. Disciplinary infractions continued, with Leach being found absent without leave in mid-February 1944, for which he received another fine. In November 1944, the 25th Battalion was committed to the Bougainville campaign. Whereas American forces had been focused on containing Japanese forces on the island, when the Australians took over, the campaign turned to the offensive. In late December, the battalion was involved in the Battle of Pearl Ridge. Believing the ridge in the centre of Bougainville Island was held by less than a company of Japanese, the 25th Battalion launched a four-pronged attack. The defending force had in fact been reinforced and was closer to a battalion in strength. Regardless, the Australians dug in and repulsed a strong counter-attack before sweeping the enemy off the ridge. An observation post was established on the ridge, which was used to direct artillery fire as the Australians pushed south towards Buin. On the afternoon of the 19th of March, men of the 25th Battalion drove Japanese soldiers from their positions. While pursuing the fleeing enemy, they encountered more troops in established positions. After a lengthy firefight, bloody hand-to-hand fighting took place before the Japanese troops finally withdrew. Australian troops pulled out before artillery fire was brought down. By the end of the day, Australians had counted 29 enemy killed, while they had lost 6 dead and 17 wounded. Thomas Leach had been wounded in action, suffering from a gunshot wound to his hips. He died of his wounds the following day. He was 23 years old. Initially buried near where he fell, his remains were later exhumed and reinterred at the Port Moresby Bamana War Cemetery, where they lie today under the inscription chosen by his grieving family. Dearly loved, sadly missed, he died his country to save. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Thomas Edward John Leach, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozier or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses, barely working to the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they'd be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff, and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support for the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.